Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Indie Author Life Show, a space that's dedicated to sharing the unique stories of authors and creatives within the self-publishing space. My name is MG Hunt, and today I'm here with the amazing Nicole Rowles, and she's here to chat about all her indie author life stories and books and creative process. So, thank you so much for joining me today here, Nicole. I really appreciate it.
I'm so excited to be here. I was just saying to you before we started recording that I listen to your episodes and watch them, and I'm a bit of a fan, so I'm actually really excited to be doing this. I
Oh,
slid into your DMs and was like, "How do I get on the podcast?"
that's all that it takes sometimes. But oh, thank you so much for saying that because I know we were just talking about that before, but it really does feel like just fun for me. And I hope that it is fun for people that join on the show, but also people that are listening too, just a casual space to kind of just chat about things that are relevant to this unique world that we live in regards to indie publishing and self-publishing, because it really is a unique corner of the internet that is filled with like-minded people. So I'm really glad that you reached out to me because then I had a chance to look at all of your amazing stuff as well and your fantastic publication, which is very interesting. And we will get into that further down in
Let's
the
talk about it.
questions. Yes, oh, I'm very excited for it. But to begin this show today, Nicole, can you give us an insight into your background and where you grew up?
Yeah, sure. So I live in Brisbane, Australia. It's where I grew up. I moved away for a little bit. I've lived many lives. I'm 35 years old, and I've had a multitude of careers, um, as well as now being an author. I My first job out of high school was working as a professional dancer. I lived and worked in Paris. I worked at the Moulin Rouge. Um,
What?
and then I came home and studied psychology and then moved into journalism and worked in broadcast news for
Wow.
about 12 years.
12
And
years. That's,
I mostly
yeah.
worked on the Gold Coast,
Hmm.
doing news down there.
Yep.
And then I moved back and worked for Channel 9 here in Brisbane.
Yep.
And then I left and now I work I worked for a period of time as like a political media advisor and speechwriter, which was really
Wow.
fun. Traveled
Mm.
from Brizzy down to Parliament House in Canberra and
Wow.
back all of the time. So that was a fun little short-lived chapter, and now I work in media and communications in like a government department.
Wow.
And now I'm an author as well. I published my debut novel Anarchist Underground in 2024.
Yes, yes, which
Yeah.
is an amazing, yeah, we can't wait to get into that. But wow,
Yeah.
you are only 35 and you have lived so many different lives. I mean,
I
to
know
be
it's
a
wild.
dancer, yeah, like if in Paris, in the Moulin Rouge, that's iconic. And that is so incredible. So how many years did you live in Paris for?
It was essentially like a gap year for me. I worked over there for a little over a year.
Mm.
I loved it and would have loved to have stayed longer, but unfortunately my body decided that I was done. So
It happens.
I came home and I went
Oh.
to bed.
Yep, yep. And sometimes it's just the way that things go. And then you know, as I say, another one door shuts, another door opens, and then you're able to lean into your other interests in creativity in a different sort with the writing for journalistic kind of practices, but also the psychology too. It's really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I
It
can't
was
believe that.
interesting. I always had a dream of working as a like a clinical psychologist because I loved talking to people and hearing their
Yeah.
stories.
Yep.
And then I got to uni and realized I'd have to do statistics all the way through. And I was like, I can't do
No.
numbers. So I was racking my brains about other professions where you could talk to people and write. And, I thought about journalism, and I'm
Yeah.
so glad that I moved into that because it's made me I think, a good writer. Like it taught me the
Mm.
kind of mechanics of telling a good story and pulling people in and also understanding so many different human experiences. Like as a journalist, you go out and you meet so many people and,
Yeah.
on the best days of their life and the worst days of their life. And,
Mm.
you get a really good, well, I feel like I got a pretty good understanding of like,
Mm.
what
You
it
would.
is to be a human across the spectrum of people's experience. So
Yep.
it's definitely, I think, helped me become
Yeah.
a writer. And it also motivated me to become an author because you don't have a whole lot of creative control over what you're writing as a journalist. You always have,
Which is good
in
in some ways.
yeah, you've got to have
Yeah.
quality
Yeah.
control, right?
Tell the
You've
truth.
got
Yeah.
producers giving their input. You've got maybe a news director or a chief of staff, and
Yeah.
there's always so many cooks in the kitchen. And I
Mm.
started writing fantasy um, uh, shortly after I started working as a journalist because I just felt like I needed to have 100% control over what I was writing. And obviously, in fantasy, that's turned up to 11
Yep.
because you don't have to like abide by any rules of the real
No.
world. You can do as much as you want or as little as you want. So it was a great outlet for, you know, sharing a little bit more creativity than I got to share in my day job, which was nice as well.
Really nice happy medium there. So it seemed like
Yeah.
every single aspect of your life, even though there were different threads at the time that seemed to not cross over, ended up kind of crossing over when you did go into writing because there was a passion for the written word. And then with dancing too, that's such a creative medium. And then you've got the psychology as well with looking into what makes people who they are. And the result is writing for fiction and for your own passions too. And I totally agree with fantasy being such a outlet and such a cathartic experience because I'm sure any writer feels like that with their genres, but what draws us to fantasy is the complete control and ultimate endless bounds of world building that you can do to create something amazing. But at the same time, it can be a bit like full on as well.
Yeah. I
Yes.
think what's cool about fantasy is that you get to explore real kind of emotions, real experiences, stuff that people can relate to
Yeah.
in a way that still feels like escapism.
Yep. Totally. And it feels like a different representation of something that might be mundane if you represented it with just a story from like a documentary kind of style
Yeah.
storytelling. But when it is packaged in a fantasy world, oh my God, it's just ticks all my
The
boxes
stakes are
for me.
high and everything's exciting and it's moving fast. And yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I am a fantasy reader as well. It's pretty
Yes.
much all that I read.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's fun to kind of contribute to that genre a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. It feels like a dream come true, I can imagine, to be like all these people, all these books that I've read, and now I'm contributing to that. So,
Yeah,
yeah, it's pretty
that's
amazing.
cool.
So then getting
Yeah.
into your writing schedule and how that fits into your life, can you give us an insight into what a day or week in the life of Nicole looks like with how writing slots into that?
Well, it's recently just been a big switch up because I have a 13-week-old baby. And
It's so
so
cute.
writing looks very different now because there is no me time
No.
anymore, you know. But she's a voracious feeder, so there's a lot of
Oh,
breastfeeding time. And
hungry girl.
usually that's usually
Hmm.
the time that I spend doing
Mm.
writing related stuff. So I have a new manuscript that is written, and I'm in the sort of developmental editing stage of that at the moment. So my goal was to finish the manuscript and get it off to my editor prior to my daughter being born.
Yep.
And in what was both a blessing and a curse, she arrived 2 weeks late. So
Oh,
I got everything sorted, and now I'm just going back and finessing. So yeah, I'm doing mostly that at the moment, and it's just intermittently throughout the day. I'm doing a lot more. I'm sure any author who's a parent can relate to this. I'm doing a lot more on my phone than I am on my
Yes.
laptop now. Google
Interesting.
Docs app is like my best friend at the moment.
Yeah, one hand
Um,
and this and then, everything going
yeah,
on. Yeah, that's so
yeah.
interesting. And so when you
So
are at those moments where, you're breastfeeding and looking after that, you've got one hand free, do you sometimes ever feel like, oh, I'm just going to sit and think rather than like actively write something down? Because I feel like that's still putting in work and world
yeah.
building when you just sit and like relax and just think about your world.
Yeah, and again, because I'm in that developmental stage,
Mm,
I was sort of collaborating with my editor recently on like a few different parts of the book that just weren't quite hitting the way that I wanted them to. So
mm,
I've been ruminating a lot lately. There's been less writing and more just kind of
yeah.
uh brooding and
Yep.
letting it simmer.
Yeah. I
So
love
that's
that.
nice. It's actually really good. I mean, everything's a season, right? And I feel like at the moment with a fresh baby, it's actually not too difficult to do
Yep.
this. I mean, we'll talk again maybe when I have a toddler and I'll be like, I'm doing nothing. I'm not writing at all.
I'm just
So,
chasing after her.
yeah, literally.
But it will change, and I think that's also exciting because you change as well. And I think sometimes we
Yeah.
just don't know where the story is going to take us to, or the stories, or the plans for future books. And I'm a big fan of sitting and thinking because I feel like once I have had enough time away from, this is just me and my practice, and it doesn't, it's not going to relate to everyone, but I find that it's easier to sit and think about everything before I sit and think at my keyboard, because when I'm there at the keyboard, I'm kind of just like, I just want to just let my fingers just go. Just go
Yeah.
for it. I've done my thinking, I've done my ruminating. I know what to do. And then put it away for a bit and come back and all that stuff.
I I think that's a great strategy. I mean, so I Anarchist Underground, which is my debut release, I wrote it's the third book that I've written and the first book that I published. I wrote it in 2017 and then I
Ah,
put it away for several years. I just had other stuff going on in
yeah.
my life and I
Hmm.
kind of shelved all of my writing.
Yep.
And then I was looking at I have written a duology and then Anarchist Underground, which is a standalone.
Yep.
That was the story I liked the best when I came back to it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until sort of 2022, 2023 that I really started seriously thinking about publishing it. And then I went back with all of this new kind of experience and
Yes.
perspective. It was almost like, I think sometimes part of the problem with editing your work
Mm.
is that you can't see the forest for the trees because you're
Yeah.
so in it.
Yep.
Whereas when I went back to this story that I hadn't looked at since 2017,
Mm.
it kind of felt like I was reading a stranger's work. And
Yes.
so it was really easy to like
Yeah.
objectively get in there and fix it up and make it a story that I really thought was worthy
Yes.
of being read.
Yes. And I think that's a perfect way to approach your editing because you do, in my opinion, the best kind of work that you do is to distance yourself from any sort of personal ties, like the whole kill your darlings kind of idea
Yeah.
that we're taught. It hurts to do that, but once you step away and you do see that forest, you're like, I know that if it was someone else's thoughts in my brain, or what would they think about that, the critical lens would say, I'm going to make that person do something that, I don't really know whether I should do that, but it serves the plot better. And I think that's where I enjoy the books that I enjoy the most are when, particularly with certain characters, that you know that the author's just like, I really kind of don't like this person, but that's what that character does. It's not just like a representation of who they want to be or who their love interest should be and all that stuff. It's really the character driving their own story and even the plots in that too. So I really enjoy editing with that critical lens. It's hard at times, but you
Yeah.
kind of just find it easier sometimes to just go, oh, I'm just editing someone else's work. It's not me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always tried to, I think like, especially when it's a creative pursuit
Yeah.
and it's so much of yourself in this work, it can be really hard to like read back on your own work and
Yeah.
also especially pass it on to other people. Like, you released your debut recently,
Yeah.
how it feels to put a piece of yourself out into the world.
Oh, yeah.
um
Yeah.
and I think, like, having worked in creative fields, since I
Mm,
was quite young, like I've
hmm.
worked as a dancer while I was in high school as well.
Yes.
So I kind of always try to reframe it as like, this is a different person,
Yeah.
my on stage persona or my writing
Yeah.
personality, that's only a part of me, and we're going to
Yep.
look at that as an objective thing, so it
Yep.
doesn't feel as much like I'm
An
cutting into my
attack.
own soul by
Yes.
accepting or applying criticism. And I think it's so
Absolutely.
important because you always want to grow,
Yeah.
and the other thing about creative work is that it's never going to be perfect. There is
No.
no such thing as perfect. So,
No.
you know
No.
you just got to embrace the fact that
Yeah.
sometimes you suck a little bit, and then
Oh, yeah. But
I'm
it's
making it better.
so, yeah, and it's hard because like I think that I would never ever want to say to a fellow author, it's made me a lot more understanding about being critical about other authors' works out there. And even when I see books or reviews for books that maybe I haven't particularly enjoyed for whatever reason, I still make sure to keep it with a critical lens of the work itself, never about the author, because sometimes some of the reviews I've seen are just awful and they are so cutting. And I think, damn, if I was the author looking at that, I would feel so disheartened by that kind of attack. It feels more like an attack or like a witty comment or something like. But really, it's so not to say that people shouldn't say what they want to say or filtering that kind of free speech. Like if you have an opinion, sure. But I think it's important to keep it in the back of your mind that it is a creative extension from someone who has put a lot of time and effort into it and is passionate about it. So critique the work, not the person. But also, I find that I'm sure because you and I have both been in creative spaces, when you are putting yourself out there in the public eye, you develop the resilience and the mental fortitude to deal with critique by doing. So it will be one of those things where it is daunting and scary to put it out there, but it has to live on its own for other people to have their opinions about. And sometimes I just have to remember that it's there for people to say what they want to say, but I know the truth and I know what I wrote and I know how I wanted it to be delivered. I can't control how anyone else is going to perceive that. It was just something I wrote, really enjoyed it. Now it's out there for people to hear. So I'm sure that was what you had to, all those feelings you had to grapple with when you first published your debut last year. Yes, it's been a
Yeah.
ride.
Do you
Yeah.
read your reviews, Monica?
No, I try not to because I read the ARC reviews. That's something before that I love, especially the ones that I do get like such a buzz when there is like a really detailed review and it might just be 3 stars, which is still a positive review.
I think 3 stars is great,
It's
honestly. I think
awesome. Oh,
3 stars is a positive review.
yeah.
Or like
And
a neutral,
yeah.
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 Likes the
And
book.
it was the
Yeah.
detail of the review. I remember reading one as an arc review for Still Waters Run Deep. The level of detail that they put into their review, I was like starstruck. Oh, and what about
Yeah.
yourself?
These are works of art themselves.
Yes. Are you a review person, as in you look at your reviews, or do you try to steer away? Yeah, it's too
No,
hard.
I don't. Well,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, it's hard to avoid, like when someone tags you on social
Yes.
media,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like people tag you in positive reviews, which is nice.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and like you do, obviously it's a wonderful feeling, but I don't seek out I
No,
don't seek
no.
out my reviews. They're not for me. This is I
Yes,
made
that's
a
right.
TikTok about this a little
Oh.
while ago,
Mm.
because I feel like
I
this
think I
is a
saw.
piece of advice that I give to like other like new authors. I did an anthology with some like debut authors recently.
Yes.
Um, and was like, just don't read them. They're not for us, they're for
Yep,
the readers.
that's it.
That's how I protect my peace. But that said, when somebody writes an incredibly thoughtful review and tags me in it and it's positive, it
Yeah.
is incredibly meaningful. Like, I would be
Oh,
lying if I said that I didn't love reading a positive review.
yeah.
And that like, you obviously get a little bit bummed out because you're attached to the work
Yep,
if it's a positive review.
absolutely.
But
It's human.
I have a one star rating on Amazon. And I
Right.
was like, I would have loved it. They didn't leave a review. And I was like, I would show me you're working. I
We
would love
want to
to know.
see. We want to see what the
I,
thoughts are.
I'm a nosy person. I
Yes.
need the information. That review I would have read. That review I would have sought out. But yeah, generally no.
Yeah. And I think like even if it was like I don't mind when there is a critical review in particular because I think that it does make me feel like, oh, like I've kind of made it a little bit if there's critical discussion about your writing because it's like,
Yeah,
oh, people are thinking about this and not just blindly like, yeah, it was good, whatever kind of thing. It's like, no, I've got thoughts around this and I've got thoughts to do with that. And I'm like, oh, get into it because I think like as an author, that's kind of what you want to do. You want people to think, you want people to go, that was a good ride and that's going to stay in my head. So yeah, I enjoy
yeah.
that.
And I think it's good for readers too. Like, if you're a reader, it's not always super helpful to have every review be
Yes,
like all of the things that
it's
you
not.
loved and none of the things that were a challenge, because
Yeah.
there's a variety of reasons why people might choose not to read a book, and you
Yeah.
maybe want to see what other people have thought before you get into it. So although I will say, as a reader, I don't really like refer that much to reviews,
Yeah.
because I'm like, that's just like your opinion, man. And I
That's
probably will
right.
have a different one reading it
Yeah.
as a different kind of person. So,
Yeah.
for me personally, I don't really read reviews as an author or a reader, but I
Yes.
think there are people, although sometimes I will say Bookstagram has been extremely helpful for, I feel
Yeah.
like I've got a mile long PR because of Bookstagram. So
Exactly.
obviously,
Yes.
and I like to see when somebody's like into the same sort of tropes or into the same sort of
Yes.
style of fantasy as
And that
me,
is
then I'll.
important, I think, to have like a space where you go, okay, I'm going to be critical about the reviews. The reviews are critical of the book, but I'm going to be critical about what that person's thinking of too. And that's a good thing too to see, oh, they've, marked that this has got this trope. Oh, okay, I like that. Or
Yeah.
it has this trope, and you go, okay, I'm going to steer away from that because that's not my thing. But
Mm.
even some of the most popular books that I've read, which I've adored, if I went onto Goodreads and clicked like, filter 1-star reviews, there would be scathing reviews for some of my favorite books out there. And I go like, how? What the hell? And sometimes I don't mind reading it because it feels like going through Reddit and looking at different people's opinions. And you go, that's cute. Don't agree,
Yeah.
whatever. And you just move on. I'm wondering if you can give us your insights into what you find most enjoyable about writing and then what's the hardest part about writing.
The thing I like most, we already touched on, is
Mm.
the complete freedom and complete ability to have ownership of the world, the characters, um, the outcomes of the story. I think for me, that as somebody that, again, like, writes for a living under a lot of constraints. Now I work in the government, so there's like this whole approvals process that
Even
you have to go
more
through to.
constraints.
Yeah, and like, obviously that's the nature of the job, so I don't
Yeah.
have a gripe with that. But then
No.
to be able to contrast that with going home and just being completely free in what I can write and create and produce and put out into the world, that is so fulfilling for me. And it makes me really, really happy.
Yeah.
And when you like there's so many different kind of levels to that, from conceiving the idea of a story, and you would know this as an author as well. It's so
Mm.
exciting when you first kind of get this tendril of a good idea, and then you
Oh.
start to kind of put the thread and unpack it a little bit more and think about the characters, and that like ruminating on something like we talked about.
Hmm.
That's really exciting. And then starting to delve in and really tell the
Oh my
story is
God.
exciting. And I also really like the process of getting to where I'm at now with my new manuscript, which is kind of finessing and making it something that I'm really proud of, and really kind of digging into the finer details of stuff that it's like, I really want to like tell this story, or show the journey of a character. How
Yes.
can I like really just get into the minutia of like
Hmm.
showing that, and being kind of subtle with it. So yeah, I like the process and the complete creative freedom of
Yes.
writing.
So
What's
good.
hard,
Mm.
honestly, it's just finding the time. um,
Yes, the
like
time.
even before Billy, my daughter, was born, it was hard. I One thing that we might talk more about when we start talking about Anarchist Underground is that like I am a passionate outdoor adventurer. I love rock climbing, I love canyoning, just
Hmm.
dabble in a little bit of whitewater kayaking.
Yeah.
I do all of these things poorly, but I do them.
You do them.
And so and so it's like the balance of having my career, which I love, having my hobbies, which I love, and then having my kind of, I don't even know what I would call writing. Like it's a creative, just
It's part of
yeah, my
you.
creative
Expression.
expression, my outlet, yeah, a
Yeah.
little piece of my soul.
Yeah.
Balancing all of those things, it's really important to me that I invest in all of those things. So
Yes.
yeah, just finding the time is hard. I wish there were more
Yeah.
hours in the day, because all of those things really mean a lot to me, and I can't imagine giving one of them up. Then I
No,
wouldn't be me. So
that's
yeah,
it.
just finding the time's hard.
Yes, it's probably one of the most shared universal grievances around writing and finding the time to do
Yeah.
it. Even for me, I think the resolve to do it sometimes when, yes, there's so many other things to get done. And then when it's time to sit down and write, you're like, oh God, I'm so tired.
Not
Like,
always in the right headspace,
no.
right? Like when you've got the
Hmm.
time,
That's
sometimes your
it.
brain isn't caught up with the
No,
availability. And
you just
that's
can't do
again
it.
how creative work
That's it.
is.
That's it.
Your brain's not always in a creative mindset.
And it shouldn't be a machine that we have to switch on. As much as though I will say, like in my day job as being a graphic designer, sometimes it does feel like you have to turn on that creativity, just like a tap. It's like, okay, we've got to create something, switch it on, done. With that, I guess because the type of graphic design that I do is a little bit more formulaic, and maybe because it's my profession, it's what I do all the time, so it's a bit easier. But when it
Mm.
comes to writing, I just feel, and I wonder if you're the same, where it's high energy in your brain. Like everything is firing on all cylinders. It's maybe not something that I find as relaxing as maybe drawing or other things like that. I don't know whether you're the same with that.
Yeah, relaxing's probably not how I would describe writing, but at the same
Mm,
time, it isn't, it isn't,
yeah,
because coming back to this sense of freedom, right? So in a
yeah.
way, it does feel like this wonderful sense of like, ah, I'm not
Yes,
beholden to anybody else when
it's
I'm producing this
exercise.
work. But then also, yeah, I mean, because you care about this work and you want to make it as good as possible, and you really, I think like the challenge and the bit that is mentally hard is like you have this idea that's
Yeah.
that's like coalescing in your brain, and you're like, how do I give this to my readers in a
Yeah.
way that is like resembles what I can see in my head?
Oh,
I think
it's
that's the bit that's hard, right?
super hard to do that, but it happens through hard work. Oh my God. And I'm sure like part of your background in the broadcasting world probably gives you an insight into maybe the visuals. I'm just trying to think of like so how social media overlaps into that sort of experience that you have. But I'm sure it does give you a sort of like understanding into what points you need to hit to present to the audience in your book. So I guess has it given you some sort of practice or things that you would like to present to the public going forward with your book?
I think so. I think on a couple of levels. One is like writing, because I was in television news.
Yep.
It's about like writing to pitches, right? So you know what
Yeah.
footage you have, and
Hmm.
then you write to tell the story according to the imagery.
Yep.
So one thing I try and do in my books is write something that tells, like provides the imagery, because I don't have that. So I think I'm conscious of like
Mm.
conjuring that picture in people's heads. And I hope that I achieve that, because
Yeah.
to me, that's always been like the way that I've told a story, is around pictures.
Yes.
And there's no
Pictures. Mm.
time that I wish I could illustrate more than when I'm writing like
Same.
world building stuff, because I'm a terrible like visual artist. I just can't. So
Oh,
I never really thought about it, and then I started writing fantasy, and I was like, oh, I wish that I could draw, because I wish I could kind of,
put it
yeah,
out there.
manifest stuff physically. But I will
Oh,
say, like the artists that I've worked with to create the scene art that I have, it
yes.
blows my mind to be able to, for them to take something that's not in their brain and it's just me describing it,
Yep.
and for it so resemblant of what I envisage, is
Oh,
like amazing and
it's a
such a
joy.
talent.
Oh,
Courtney Kelly is the artist that's done the majority of my art, and she is just like a master at taking written word and turning it into something visual. So
oh.
yeah, I really admire that. I could never.
It's amazing what people can do out there. And even if you are someone who enjoys drawing, there's so much even that I wish I could create, that I know that there are limitations to the worlds that I want to create. Yes, it is really helpful when creating characters. I find that to be like, yeah, I know exactly what that person's going to look like and all that stuff. But even still, when you write something and you really want to draw it, sometimes it just doesn't even like convey exactly how you want to make it look. But it is such a thrill when someone else, as you were just saying, is not the author, but is interpreting what you've written and this is what they create. It's just amazing. It's magic. It's
Yeah.
so cool. So I have to check out some more of Courtney's work. Courtney, is that right? Yes.
Courtney Kelly is her name.
Courtney
She's
Kelly.
amazing.
God.
Somebody sent me some like fan art of one of the, I guess he's a villain, more of an antagonist in the story Splinter. And it's like insane. It's so good. That was like a huge, yeah, it was a really special moment. One, to get
Yes.
a piece of fan art, but also for it to be like so cool and
Love
creepy
it.
and awesome was just, yeah, like
Love
really
it.
incredible.
Love
Yeah.
fan art. Love doing that. I love drawing fan art as well. So I might have to just add some characters from Anarchist Underground to my list of maybe
And
I get
send
around
it
to.
through. I love
Oh
seeing
yeah,
people's fans. It's wild. Yeah.
have to do it. Have to do it when I get the time.
Yeah, I know
Amongst
that's it, right?
all the other things that are going on in the world. But we should
Yeah.
get more and more into Anarchist Underground because, first of all, the title, absolutely love that. It really does. Um, I think it really matches with the cover because I think that
Mm.
like the cover from what I remember, and I should actually bring it up on my screen, but I don't have it here, so that's fine. I'll just remember from what I can remember. There is it's like a fiery background with some rocks and a
Yeah.
dark kind of vibe, and then there's the sword
It's like a building on fire in the
building on
background.
fire. Yes.
Like a silhouette of a building on fire. Yeah.
Well, setting things on
I'll,
fire.
I'll tell you, yeah, that's a common theme in this book, actually. A lot of
Hmm.
pyromania going on, a lot of explosions.
Oh
I'll tell
yeah.
you a story about
Yeah.
when I got my designed. My editor for the first book, Jason, he is has been doing this a long time, and he said to me, "Your book will market better if you have a person on the front." And I was
Really?
like, personally, I it's not my favorite type of covers. I mean,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Mm.
what I want is for once somebody has read the book, for them to look at the cover again and understand what every element of the cover, every piece of the
Yes.
imagery
Yeah.
means in the story.
Yeah.
And so my artist, well, one of my really good friends, Bonnie, did the concept, and then my artist, Phil, created it. I had no, like, little to no involvement in the initial design because, again, not a
Yep.
visual artist at all.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
fine too. Yeah, you want the professionals to just go for it. Yeah.
yeah, the
Good.
idea that I had ended up not working at all. And so
Okay.
we kind of workshopped a couple of things, and it is what you see. And I love
Mm.
it so much. I think,
Yes.
so, and I'm thinking now, I'm like uh, visualizing what the next book, which is an interconnected standalone in
Oh,
the same world,
yes.
I'm visualizing
Hmm.
that, and I'm getting really excited about it because I think that's going to be beautiful too.
It just screams anarchy. Like when I looked at it, I was like, yes, this is so. And maybe I do gravitate to things that are a bit chaotic and a bit like, I mean, at the moment I'm reading, I don't know whether you're familiar with Jay Kristoff and the Empire of the
Yeah,
Vampire series and all that.
I keep people keep talking to me about it, and I
Yeah.
haven't read it. And I every time
Oh.
somebody brings it up, I'm like, oh, I've got to read it. But
Oh,
yeah, the
it's
things that are,
devastating, but
yeah,
I love it. I love all that kind of like, I think that's the dark side in me that loves all that
yeah,
kind of like, let's get into the nitty gritty. I don't want like a soft, romantic kind of thing, which is fine. That's some people's favorite kind of things. And there's heaps of books out there for all that stuff, but give me the pain, give me
darkness. Yeah.
and all that
I know I
stuff.
don't
Yeah.
look like it,
No,
but
no, no, no,
I
no.
love a dark
Yep.
story. I love
Mm-hmm.
like
Yep.
explosions and
Yes.
bloodshed and
It's just intense.
emotional
So
turmoil
interesting. Mm-hmm.
and like
Mm-hmm.
sweaty palms action.
Yep.
All of that is like, I love to read it, and I
Yes.
especially love to write it.
Absolutely. Which I think that's why anarchist is, I know anarchist underground, but the word anarchist is so um yeah, I think that captures exactly probably what the themes are in the story
Yeah.
and everything that you're just describing as well. It doesn't matter about what we look like, it is what we like inside, of course. But
Yeah.
I am with you when it comes to, well, like I'm on the fence with like faces on the covers because just going back to what you were saying with the advice that you got about having a person on the cover, because on one hand, I know that some people really don't want to see a visualization of the character maybe that they're thinking of in the book. And that is a fine argument. I think that yep, that's all good. There are certain genres where if the book is like a romance novel, and I think that you've got the two characters in that, I can see that's where you have the ability to show what the kind of characters are like, maybe what professions they do, or all that stuff with different items in their hands and all that kind of stuff. It is genre specific, but I do love it when the cover maybe has maybe some items or a vibe, a color scheme that is inclusive of well, as much as it can be, every theme that you might expect. And where it shines in fantasy is that, yes, it's giving you something that is, the vibe is maybe prescriptive, but the actual content isn't because you don't have a person. Maybe. Depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I
Yeah.
stand
Yeah. Totally.
on. Yeah,
Mm.
so you're
I
completely right.
um re what you said about not wanting to envisage a character. That's
Yeah.
why I personally, I mean, I it's not going to stop me reading a book for sure,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
personally gravitate more towards an item rather than a person.
Yeah.
But I'm so stubborn about that that this is why I don't like audiobooks, because I'm like, don't
Ah,
tell me what that person's voice sounds like. I
interesting.
have an idea already in my head of
Yeah.
like an accent
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like hello or hi or the kind of timbre and
Yeah.
quality and tone of
Mm,
their voice.
yeah.
So yeah, for me, like it extends even further. I can't like I'm just not an audiobook girl. I probably need will become one in the next few years as being a parent now, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's always been
That
a
too, that too.
sticking point for me.
Yeah.
My preference is an audiobook where the person is not trying really hard to do the different voices,
Oh, yeah.
because
Yeah.
for some
Yeah.
reason I just can't. like voices and
Mm,
accents and language are like something that I'm interested
yeah.
in Anarchist Underground.
Mm-hmm.
There's two warring nations that speak two different languages, and it means
Mm.
something whether it's significant whether the character speaks this
This
language or that
language.
language, whether
Yeah.
they're bilingual. There are certain people that are bilingual for
Mm.
reasons, and it's like it's central to the story. So,
Yes.
yeah, I kind of like the idea of yeah, being able
Interesting.
to fully conceive that myself rather than having
Yourself.
somebody tell me what that sounds
Yeah.
like.
And if it's a bad like rendition of the accent, then it can take you out of the fantasy. Just like thinking to a recent audiobook that I was listening to, there were two voices that were telling different parts of the story. One of the voice actors would do this character's voice in a distinctive Irish accent, but then when it switched over to the other voice actor, the Irish accent started to just go a bit too Northern England for me, and I was just like, this is not the same person that you're trying to just anyway, whatever. Like I like audiobooks just for the sake of multitasking. However,
Yeah,
I'm the same with you when it's not right with all that stuff, it's like, oh, that should have just maybe, I don't know, that's my maybe just some
yeah, I get it. Yeah, I
attention
get
to
it.
detail in that kind of stuff. But anyway, getting into more about Anarchist Underground, which of course we love the
Let's talk
title.
about the book. Yay!
Yes, let's talk about the book. Love the title, love the cover, but I would love to get into the meat and bones about it because I really love how there's a bit of a mystery element to the story with a murder mystery kind of statement already put out in the blurb, which now I'm going to read out what I have written there and you can correct me if I'm going to pronounce any of the characters' names wrong.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes. But
That's
in
fine. No judgment. It's fantasy.
okay, good. But I'm trying to like channel, all right, how things will be pronounced. But in the first sentence, I believe, of your blurb for Anarchist Underground, so it says King Sabin
That's all right.
of Dinwin,
Dunwin.
Dunwin, excuse
This is
me,
funny.
Sabin of Dunwin, Dunwin, is that
Got
correct?
it.
Is dead, and they say his son Bryn.
Now that.
All right, cool. We got that. Was the one who killed him. Now,
Mhm.
when I read that, I was like, okay, we are setting ourselves up for some conspiratorial elements here. I love that. So, what inspired you to take this approach with writing a fantasy novel that does have a bit of a murder mystery underneath it?
Yeah. So Anarchist Underground is a political intrigue. It's a
Hmm.
for those who don't know, and Monica, I'm assuming you haven't read the book.
No,
This
but
is
go
a
for it.
non-magical fantasy. So this is like Game of Thrones vibes, pre-dragons, pre-White Walkers. I like to describe it as all swords, no sorcery.
Yep,
It's
love it.
normal, ordinary people with
Yep.
the same kind of human constraints that we have doing kind of exceptional things. And I love political intrigue. I love reading it. I love writing it. I think because growing up, I used to read a lot of like mystery. This is maybe showing my age, but I grew up reading like the Famous Five,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, which is like for the kids in the audience, it's like a story about children, like young children. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Young children solving mysteries, basically solving like real crimes.
Real
Where are the
crimes.
police? We don't know. Um, they're solving like smuggling cases. There's like kidnapping and trafficking going. It's like serious shit, you know.
Serious.
Not
It's
sure what the
serious.
police are doing, but we
Don't
won't
need
we
them.
won't get it doesn't matter. Yeah, I always loved the idea as a reader of trying to get ahead, trying to solve the problem, and trying to like pull on the threads and take all of the
Yes.
clues and solve the crime. And I think for me, like political intrigue is a great way of applying that to a fantasy story. So
Yes.
I mean, it's not a mystery, that
Mm-hmm.
it's there in the blood. And
Yeah.
Sabin of Dunwyn is dead. They say his son Bryn killed him.
Yep.
So I think the adult version of the solving the mystery is not so much the who, it's the why.
Why?
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's trying to figure out people's motivations and
Yeah.
who's pulling the strings and why. And so in the case of Anarchist Underground, there's these two kind of warring nations. They've been at war for a long time. There's all of this kind of political tension, but there's also like tension within the country where we start the story, Dunwin, because we've got our anarchists, our criminals who are sort of like relegated to one part of the city that's like their lawless area and the law will not intervene there. It was
Mm.
just kind of easier to cordon off that part of the city than it was to try and, you know, enforce the law with these people because they're always going to figure out a way around the law. So,
Yeah.
so there's a bit of kind of push and pull between the people who hold the power in the city and the anarchists. When we start the story, our female main character Ayla has returned from fighting in a really bloody war. She's come back, and basically what she discovers is that her king, who she loves and is sort of like a father substitute for her, he's dead.
Mm.
And in his absence, what's happened is that the anarchists have sort of started encroaching on the rest of the city and sort of expanding, and they've been emboldened by the fact that the leadership has changed and they're in a state of
Mm.
political turmoil. So
Mm.
that's where we come to the story, and Bryn, who is the man of the hour, the crown prince, but also the wanted murderer of the king, he's fled,
Mm.
and he is believed to be hiding out in Anarchist Underground.
Just so interesting because I think that's one of the appeals for, I guess, Game of Thrones in particular is the politics around it. And I can see why this book really has a deep pull into just wanting to know why something happened rather than this is the case, someone is dead, the king is dead. Now the whole world of Ayla, is that her name?
Yeah,
I
Ayla. Yeah.
Ayla, her whole world is thrown upside down, and all that she's known is thrown into this whole tailspin because of something that she probably didn't think would happen has happened. And why? The foundations. I just love when there is an explanation and exploration into the foundations of something that you've always believed to be true isn't like that at all. And
Mm,
so then there's that little bit of mystery coming out and all that stuff. So I love
yeah.
it. So for
Yeah.
people that do want to have a look deeper into Anarchist Underground, can you give an insight into some of the themes and tropes in the book?
Sure. So we talked about political intrigue, the fact that there's kind of this overarching sense of unease, I guess. We understand that there's a balance of power that's kind of shifting a bit. There's a temporary kind of uneasy truce between these two warring nations.
Mm.
Meanwhile, back home, the traditional people who traditionally held the power are sort of in a state of turmoil, and the
Mm.
criminals in the city are using that to their advantage. So that's sort of one thing that's happening. And then there's also this sort of so with Ayla, one of the themes that's sort of central to her story arc is this idea of having everything that she's ever known be shaken. So
Yes.
she um, is like a warrior from way back. She's a celebrated soldier. She's
Yes.
very young and rose through the ranks very quickly because she's talented, but also because the war's been going on for a long time, and a
Yeah.
lot of the more senior people who were in charge have been killed.
Yep.
So they're
Mm.
moving up. We have seen this historically in war, right? These really young people come up because
Yeah.
everybody else is
Everyone
unavailable.
else is gone.
Yeah. So there's that part of her. That's a huge part of her identity.
Yeah.
And then she comes home, and there's no more war to fight, and she's
Mm.
grappling with this kind of loss of identity, and that's
Yeah.
kind of the
Mm.
inciting incident for the story because she
Mm.
sort of finds herself retired from the army,
Yep.
and she can't adjust to civilian life. She's making bad decisions, and she actually ends up getting embroiled with a criminal gang, which is where she
Yeah.
comes across our male main character, Bryn. And so
Yeah.
then what we
Interesting.
see is this kind of uneasy truce forming between these two people who are completely at odds with each other because, she believes that he sort of holds the key to discovering maybe a wider
What's
plot
underneath? Mm.
surrounding the death of his father.
Oh,
So they kind of is this uneasy truce that forms between them, and she essentially kidnaps him and takes him
oh,
on a cross country journey to into the heart of enemy territory to figure out who's responsible for sort of this bigger plot to destabilize the kingdom. So I'm trying not to give
yes.
anything away.
No,
Um,
no, but that's
yeah,
fantastic. That is so
so that's
interesting.
that's another theme, and then the
Yeah.
third theme that I want to talk about is the idea of found family. So
Oh,
um, when we find Bryn, he is living in anarchist underground under an alias, and one of the people in the gang that he is associated with is this little boy. He's kind of like a Artful Dodger from Oliver meets like Hit Girl from Kick Ass.
yeah.
He's like a little genius. He's 9, and he's essentially been raised by criminals, and his very brilliant mind has been honed for nefarious means.
Mm.
And there's sort of this really unlikely kind of companionship and like family, like brothers dynamic between Bryn and this little boy Bowie.
Love it.
And he's sort of central to the story as well. Ends up again trying not to like give anything away,
Mm.
but he ends up like stowing away with them when Ayla kidnaps Bryn. He ends up like coming with them and
Going with them somehow.
being like a key sort of player in this story as well. So and he's funny. He's got like a bit of a biting wit and
Love it.
a filthy swears like a sailor and
Little 9-year-old.
knows a lot more than he shares. And yeah, he's a really fun character as well. So yeah, the dynamic between the three of them is really fun and interesting. So yeah, those are sort of the three, like political intrigue,
Yep.
like an enemies to allies to
Yep.
some sort of
Whatever
sexy
happens.
attraction.
Yep. Yep.
It's kind
Hmm.
of stalled out by this idea that these people are not like Ayla and Bryn are not at all
Compatible.
compatible
Yeah.
because Britain has done a terrible thing, but also because
Mm.
this is something that I really like to explore, and it's how I start writing my stories is usually by introducing two characters who um, kind of contradict each other and will push and
Mm.
pull each other and challenge each other.
Yeah.
So Ayla is this kind of rigid rule follower. She's got a
Yeah.
strong sense of duty and a strong kind of moral center.
Mm.
And then Bryn is, he kind of, as the Crown Prince, was famously like a womanizer, a rebel, used to like
Mm.
sneak into anarchist underground and like get into fights and
Wreak
drink and do
havoc.
drugs.
Yes. Yes.
Now he's a wanted murderer.
Mm.
And so together they just are not yeah, not, I don't want to
Unassuming.
say
Yeah.
compatible. Their values do not align at the start of the book,
Yeah.
and so it's fun to see how they kind of challenge and change each other for the
Yes.
better as well.
Because there's a lot of character growth, and I think that's probably one of the main things that I like either I don't mind if it's friends to lovers or enemies to lovers, but there is something really great about an enemies to lovers sort of trope when there's a lot of character growth, where it's not just one character changing to fit the other. I think it works really well when both meet each other at the same spot or realize, hey, we're actually not that different. And I like that part of you that is so passionate about your cause and this is mine. But then the tension arises when it's not the same belief system for whatever reasons. And I think also with the political intrigue that is the foundation of the story, it's again such a rich tale as old as time to go into. And that's not to say that it's unoriginal, because it's certainly not. And it certainly keeps popping up every single decade and century that we go into with our history. It is such a rich tapestry to explore how, I mean, even when you look at getting into modern politics with a seriously divided belief system with left and right wing politics, which, of course, again, that's tale as old as time. But I love getting into working out and trying to understand why these beliefs are so against what I personally believe, but why are so many people hell bent on believing such? And where do you, when you start to unravel all that kind of um, follow the path of where those beliefs come from, it is from this institutionalized kind of bogus, whether it be from a political ideology, from the wealthy class, or even religion and other kind of things that people are, this is the hill that they're going to die on. And I love exploring that because there's so much you can get into from just, oh, that person believes in that, that person believes in that, but really understanding why and the conflict that can arise or the connections that can arise from seeing the other side's perspective is very interesting. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely on my to-read
Yeah, I love that. I like unpacking sort of political power plays and games
list.
and unlikely alliances and all of that stuff. I mean, I loved Game of Thrones for that reason.
Yes.
And yeah, like I
Oh,
said, it's sort of a bit of that vibe in this story as well. So
yeah.
and one of the things about writing non-magical fantasy is that it
Hmm.
enables you to focus. For me, it's allowed me to focus more on the interpersonal relationships
Yes.
and you know, the kind of moral push and pull that these characters experience, rather than spending word count writing about like a complex magical system. And
Yeah.
because this is standalone, I think that's what's allowed me to write a kind of concise standalone, is
Yeah.
because it's, you know, that there's not that additional kind of not constraint, but that additional kind
Yeah.
of word count required for yeah,
Yeah.
the magical side of things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love being able to focus all of my attention on creating this like complex system of politics and you know, personal motivations and loyalties and, you know, yeah.
Yes.
So
So
yeah, it's really fun.
relevant.
I love reading non-magical fantasy. I know it's a bit of a, like a rare subgenre in fantasy,
Yep.
but it's actually one of my favorite. Non-magic or magic light fantasy is really interesting to me
Yep.
because of that. Because usually it comes with like a really complex kind of political setup, but
Yes.
also I love the idea of exploring um that people being constrained by their humanity,
Mm.
right? Like
Mm.
the people
Mm.
in my story are exceptional because of their intelligence, because of their like physical capabilities. Usually they put a lot of time and effort into like training, or there's like certain reasons why Freyla, like she grew up on the border of these two warring nations, and so she's, you know, always been in a state of like conflict because they were constantly being like raided by people from across the border. So
Yep.
she's like spent her whole life basically like honing her abilities as a fighter to
Mm.
try and like be more effective at protecting her people. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love exploring the idea of people becoming exceptional because of
Through
like
exceptional
human experience,
circumstances.
rather than, yeah, rather
Yeah.
than through magic. And I do love
Mm.
magical fantasy as well, but I just think it's an interesting point of difference to explore. And I think
Absolutely.
the fun thing about non-magical fantasy is it's kind of an inroad for people who are maybe like, what's this romantasy
Yes.
thing? Like maybe
Mm.
you tried to read like When the Moon Hatched and you were like, I my
I,
brain hurts.
yep.
you know,
That
it's a
happens.
lot and
It's a
it's
lot.
exceptional. But if you're just getting into it, it's this is like a good little amuse bouche, you know,
That's
it's like a good
it.
little
That's
way
it.
of getting a taste tester without you know, getting the full slap in the face with wizardry and
Exactly.
winged.
Exactly. That can be a lot, and it can be a barrier for a lot of people to get into it. That
Yeah.
leads me to get into the next question, which I believe you've kind of already answered, but I would love for you to formally say, if you can say, what's next for your
Yeah.
writing project. So I think you did mention an interconnected standalone. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been talking about this on social media, so it's definitely not a secret. I
Yep.
am writing a interconnected standalone that is set 11 years after the events of Anarchist Underground. And the reason why it's set at that time is because two reasons. Stuff's going on politically that sort of it pertains to how Anarchist Underground ended.
Yep.
But then the second reason is because the little boy character who I was talking about before,
Mm.
Bowie, who's everybody's favorite character, including mine, is getting his own POV story.
Love it.
So he's
Yeah.
an adult now. And for those who've read the book, you'll know that the way the story ended, I'm sure you can imagine. I'm trying again not to spoil anything. The way the story ended has significantly impacted the way that he lives his
hmm
life,
Yep.
the future
Perfect.
adult.
I think
So,
that's yeah, way to
yeah,
describe that.
did
Yeah.
I say something without saying anything?
Yep.
Um,
Perfect.
so yeah. So yeah, he's a really interesting brain to get into, although it has been a
Mm.
challenge. There's like I think there's like a TikTok or an Instagram reel about this that's like I wrote a really smart character and now I too have to be try and be
Smart.
really smart. So
Yeah.
he's been hard to write because he's always a step ahead of everybody. But you know, one thing about this story, without giving anything away, is it's sort of like the first time in his life when he's not a step ahead. There's a lot of stuff
Mm.
going on that's really surprising to him, whereas in Anarchist Underground, he's sort of the character
Is the
that's
character.
unsurprised by most
Yeah.
stuff.
That's going to be epic. Do we have like a potential release date or anything like that in mind?
All I'm saying at this point in time is 2026,
Yep.
mostly because obviously I have a new baby. I know I'm going to
Yep.
release it next year. I'm going to a couple of events late, sort of mid to late
Ooh.
2026, and I'm really
Mm.
hoping to have the book out by then.
Yep.
I've got a couple of, I'm going away overseas for work early next year, so
Oh,
you know I've got a couple of things going on, but I'm really
wow.
hoping that yeah, by like maybe July or August of 2026. Ugh,
It will be
maybe
out.
well, I'll have it by then. Yeah.
Whatever happens, happens. I'm the same as
Yeah.
you, hoping to get my interconnected standalone out. 2026, probably the later half. That's fine. Whenever it happens,
Yeah.
it happens. So that's really cool that you're going to be at some events next year. Are they Brisbane events or are you going
They're
interstate?
actually not. I'm going to Love on the Beach on the
Oh,
Gold
on
Coast,
the
so
Gold
that's the
Coast.
South Queensland.
Okay.
I've got an event for those of you in Southeast Queensland. I'm
Yep.
going to Fantasy Con on the Gold Coast on the
Oh,
14th of December. And then I've
nice.
got a huge period of time
Yeah.
because of that work period overseas. And then I'm writing and being a
Yep.
parent. My next event will be Love on the Beach in August 2026.
Yep.
And then
Awesome.
it's in the pages in Bendigo.
Oh, are
Are you
you coming to
yeah,
Bendigo?
yeah,
Yes.
well, I see you there.
You will see me there. Oh my
How good.
goodness. That's so
There's such an
cool.
amazing community of like bookish people in Bendigo. I'm so
Yes.
excited to go there. I feel like there's just this like
Yes,
little enclave of
it
really,
is.
really passionate readers and writers and
Yes,
you know bookstore owners and it's going to be
definitely.
incredible. I can't wait to go there.
Absolutely. And also, if you get a chance to go to Ballarat as well, another B, um, there's also a lot there as well. Shout out to Coven Press and the ladies that run that because they're a little collective that are made up of some other
Okay.
artists and graphic designers, editors, and all that. And they ran all booked out this year, so that was really interesting too. So you've got your travel plans sorted, I think, for next year. But finally, to wrap this amazing chat up, where can people find you on your social media?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram and half-heartedly also on TikTok,
Okay, love
at
that.
Nicole Rowles underscore writing.
Yep,
I'm sure it'll be tagged in the,
you will
you
in the
know,
show notes.
where it's tagged.
Yeah,
Yeah, come and give us a follow and like please slide into my DMs. I love it, honestly. I
love to
love
chat.
talking to people. I'm not always on social media at the moment,
That's
obviously,
fine.
because of having a baby.
Yeah.
But when I'm on, I'm like so always so stoked to talk to people about book stuff.
Yep.
Um, it's like, I'm not saying come in and you don't have to talk to me about the book necessarily, but I do love when people are like giving me a full kind of rundown, like a play by
Yes.
play as they're reading. It's like my favorite thing in the world. So please never feel like you're spamming me. I love it. So
Oh my
yeah,
goodness. Your DMs
this is
are
an open
always open.
invitation. Join me on social media. My DMs are open.
That's
Yeah.
right. No, you're there and you're here to stay because you are seriously creating some magic. Even if there's no actual magic in your book, what you're writing is absolutely amazing. And I think it's seriously needed in the current political climate that we're in as well. A good exploration into two sides and looking into things that aren't always what they seem as well. So, I just absolutely love what you're doing, Nicole, and you're such an energy and such a vibe. It's infectious. I have just really
Great.
loved chatting with you today about your book, but also about your life in general, your writing life, but also getting an insight into your background too, with your broadcasting background, bit of psychology and all that. So, thank you so much for joining us on the show
Thank
today, Nicole.
you. It was such a pleasure. I mean, this has been great. Just two yappy girls talking
That's
about
it.
books.
Just yapping.
I'm always just happy to chat book stuff, and
That's
I
it.
really appreciate this. It's been such a robust conversation. I've really
Ah,
enjoyed it.
well, anytime. You're a friend of the show, so we'll have to get you on again sometime soon. Thank you so much for watching the Indie Author Live show. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want to know more about my own literary journey or the journey of some of our guests that you might have seen on the show, please consider subscribing or following my Substack or my YouTube channel. Finally, if you want to know more about my novel, Still Waters Run Deep, it is available on many distribution websites such as Amazon, Etsy, Baventi, you name it. All that information will be in the show notes if you're interested in learning more about my story to do with elemental magic and coming of age. Take care, everyone, and see you in the next episode.